All right, so this video goes with the back of the yellow page that you were given in class, which is just practicing solving our quadratic equations. So the first half of this video is just going to be on how to choose the right method, and then if you're still having trouble with solving, then the next video will go into how to solve. So I would encourage you to try these on your own first. Check your answers. If you have them all right, then you don't need to watch this video. But if you are struggling with a couple of the concepts, then these two sets of videos, this series of videos will be good for you to watch. So first, going into choosing our method. So the first ones are very easy to find, your square root properties. Those are the ones that are in vertex form, or they don't have a bx term. So we want to figure out which of those two are going to be our square root property first, and then the other four we'll figure out if it's factoring or quadratic formula. So if I look, this one has a bx term, so I cannot use the square root property on that. Same with this one, it has an x term. This one has an x term. This one is in vertex form. So this is a perfect one to solve using our square root property. So I'm just going to put that in this box here. As my first one, I'm going to solve using the square root property. So it's number 2. Then this one has an x term, so I can't use that. This one doesn't have an x term. This one does. So number 3 is also going to be the other one I use the square root property for, because all the other ones have an x term, which means that I can't use the square root property to solve. Squared plus 40 equals x squared minus 50. So now the other 4, and I'm not going to solve in this video. I'm just going to choose. Then if you're going to try to solve them, and then you can watch the other video on how to solve. So these other 4 are either factoring or the quadratic formula, and we start both of those processes the same. We're going to start both of them by trying to factor first. So I'm just going to write the rest of my problems in these boxes here, and then I will first check to see if I can factor. And then if I can't factor, then that means that I have to use the quadratic formula. But we're always going to start with, can we factor this? Because factoring honestly goes a whole lot faster. So if we can factor, then let's do it that way and save us some time. Okay, so these are the 4 problems I'm going to check for factoring our quadratic formula. So starting with my first one, I'm going to subtract 2 to this side. So I have 3x squared plus 23x minus 8 equals 0. So then to factor, we come up with the factors of the first term and the last term. So this would be 1 times 3. This would be 1 times 8 and 2 times 4. So I know that my terms have to start with, my factors have to start with a 1 and a 3. A 1x and a 3x, because those are the only factors of 3. So then I need to see if when I do this, can I come up with terms that give me 23 on the inside? So something times 3 and something times 1 to give me 23. Well, if I put 1 here and 8 here, I know one of them has to be negative because I have a negative last term. So that's going to give me 8 and 3. That won't really work. If I switch it and I make this 8 and this 1, if I make this a positive 8, that would give me positive 24x. If I make this a negative 1, that would give me a minus 1x. So then positive 24 minus 1x would give me 23. So these are the correct factors. So I'm basically ready to solve, but I know that I can do this by factoring. All right, so then on to number 4. So I'm going to see if I could factor this. So my factors of 2 are just 1 and 2. My factors of 7 are just 1 and 7. So now if I test out, I know that my first term has to have a 1x and my second term has to have a 2x, because this is the only option to get 2x squared as that first term. So then is there a way I can write 1 and 7 that's going to give me negative 10? Since it's adding to negative 10 and multiplying to a positive 7, that means both of these terms are negative, right? Because a negative times a negative gives me a positive answer. A negative plus a negative would give me a negative here. So if I make this 1 and this 7, I end up with negative 7 and negative 2, which is negative 9. So that doesn't work. So then if I switch them and make this 7 and 1, that would give me negative 14 and negative 1, which wouldn't give me negative 10. So between these two factors, I could not factor this out. So that means that factoring is not the option here, right? It did not factor, so I'm going to have to use the quadratic formula. All right, so we're going to do the same process for the last two. We're just seeing, can it factor? And if it can, great, then that will be the way we solve. If it can't, then we're going to have to go back and use the quadratic formula. So for this one, I'm going to subtract 70 from both sides first, because in order to factor or use the quadratic formula, I need all my terms on one side of the equal sign. So then I could tell from a 2, a 4, and a 7 that I could factor a 2 out to make this much simpler of a problem. So I have x squared minus 2x minus 35. And then I can factor this to x minus 7, x plus 5, right? Negative 7 plus 5 gives me negative 35. Negative 7 plus 5 gives me negative 2. So then I used factoring to solve, and I'll finish solving that in the last video. So now I'm going to go finish this problem, figure out, can I factor this? And if not, that means I have to use the quadratic formula. So I'm going to subtract x squared, add 8x, add 8x. So I get 2x squared plus 6x plus 5 equals 0. So then if I write out my factors of 2 are 1 and 2, which means I need a 1x and a 2x as my first terms, because that's the only option to get a 2x squared here. You can write the 2x here and the 1x here. Where you put these does not matter, but you need one 1x and one 2x as that front term. Then the only numbers that multiply to give you 5 are 1 and 5. Since both these are positive, I'm going to have positive factors here. So then is there a way to write this that I get positive 6? Well, if I make this 1 and this 5, that would give me 5x and 2x, which is 7x, so that won't work. So then if I try switching them, because it has to be a 5 and a 1, I get 10x and 1x, which is 11x. So that means I cannot factor this one, right? None of those factors give me the right terms, which means I have to use the quadratic formula. Okay, so now we figured out the method that we are using to solve each problem. So now I want you to go ahead and solve them. Check your answers and see if you get the right answers. If you do, you don't need to watch the second video. If you do not get all the right answers, then I might suggest watching the second video to figure out what your mistake is.